Washington, come one and all. Welcome to the District of Columbia. Welcome to Washington, D.C. This is the place where dreams come true. Yes, the capital of the United States. We'll enter the heart of our nation. We'll see where our bills become law. We'll visit the site of the White House and monuments that bring awe. Well, the national capital is not in any state. No favorites are made, no state can overtake. Located on the banks where the Potomac River flows. Where? Between Maryland and Virginia, Congress chose to be the spot for the country's headquarters. President Washington mapped out the borders. Welcome to Washington, D.C. This is the place where dreams come true. Yes, the capital of the United States. We'll enter the heart of our nation. We'll see where our bills become law. We'll visit the site of the White House and monuments that bring awe. United States.
D.C. statehood, one too many issues. Time after time, D.C. residents have advocated for full rights as citizens of the United States of America. D.C. residents have no autonomy over their local government, as Congress has a final say in local laws, the budget, and other issues. This doesn't happen anywhere else throughout the 50 states. Therefore, in order for D.C. to gain autonomy from the federal government, residents have, for a long time, advocated for D.C. statehood. Washington, D.C. is the heart of our nation, according to the song Welcome to Washington that you just heard. Likewise, our bills become law in the district. The White House, Congress, iconic monuments, museums, and government buildings are all located in Washington, D.C. However, even though D.C. is the capital of the world's most powerful country, the residents lack autonomy. Consequently, this has to change. Today, there are 4 set phrases that all advocate and support for the argument of D.C. statehood. I will outline each of them and their contribution to the movement. The first is taxation without representation. The set phrase, taxation without representation, dates back to when colonists from 13 colonies fought for representation in the British Parliament. Colonists were heavily taxed but had no representation. In that same sense, it is shameful that today, Washington, D.C. does not have proper representation. D.C. residents pay taxes and yet they lack full voting representation in Congress. People who live in D.C. pay the second highest per capita federal income taxes in the country, but have no vote on how the federal government spends their tax dollars and no vote on important issues. To advocate for the cause, on November 2000, the Department of Motor Vehicles in D.C. began issuing license plates with the set phrase, taxation without representation. The license plates are found in cars throughout the district, and in a way, they are a living advertisement in support of D.C. statehood. The Leadership Conference, the nation's premier civil and human rights coalition, says that taxation without representation is still a fact of life in Washington, D.C. These residents do have shadow representation. They have one non-voting delegate in Congress, Eleanor Holmes Norton, but she cannot do what other representatives in Congress can do, vote on the House floor. D.C. has no voting senators either, like the 50 states. This is shameful and unethical, and it needs to stop. No taxation without representation. In 2013, the Washington Post released an article saying that President Obama decided to use D.C. taxation without representation license plates. This action was contrary to President Bush, who did not want government vehicles to have this particular license plate. Last but not least, a local bar in the D.C. area has a set phrase, taxation without representation, in the tax section of their receipts. The second set phrase, #DC statehood, also advocates for D.C. statehood on social media with the particular focus of raising awareness and bringing people to support the movement. Neighbors United for D.C. statehood use the hashtag. This picture with an adapted D.C. flag, no vote, no voice, support D.C. statehood, makes use of the hashtag DC statehood. In this picture, D.C. Councilmember Bonds uses the hashtag DC statehood in a Twitter post. The picture makes use of symbolic speech as she asks herself, why don't the residents of America's capital have full voting rights? In 3 other Twitter posts, people use the hashtag DC Statehood to advocate for the movement and particularly to complain that Republicans are not in support of the movement. Another post makes use of the hashtag to circulate a potential tattoo in support of DC Statehood. Last but not least, another Twitter post user used the hashtag DC Statehood and attached John Oliver's video in which he talks about DC Statehood. The third set phrase that advocates for DC statehood is the 51st state. Essentially, by using the 51st state, DC residents are advocating for DC to become the newest state in the United States. The website New Columbia Vision makes use of the phrase the 51st state. The Daily Caller News Foundation also makes use of the 51st state when it asks the question, is DC about to be America's 51st state? The website address, the51st.org, is used by the grassroots organization Neighbors United for DC Statehood. New Columbia website also uses the 51st state as its logo and in an explanation that seeks to outline the benefits of DC becoming the 51st state of the Union. Last but not least, the Facebook group Friends of the 51st State makes use of the phrase. The fourth and last important set phrase that seeks to advocate for DC statehood is New Columbia. The New Columbia Vision puts it clear as it states, New Columbia is the city and future 51st state where more than 658,000 residents of the District of Columbia live. It includes within its borders a wide variety of people and places. This would potentially be the state. New Columbia is not the nation's capital. Congress, the White House, the Supreme Court, and most of the federal government buildings are concentrated within a small part of today's District of Columbia that was designed to house the federal government. New Columbia is the rest of Washington, D.C., the city distinguished from the federal government. The district with its new boundaries be in control of Congress as stated by the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8. DC.gov has a section on New Columbia and a New Columbia Statehood Commission that was established. Furthermore, the website govtrack.us shows an outline of the New Columbia Admission Act, which would establish the state of New Columbia. New Columbia Vision also has extensive information about New Columbia. As is clear, with the combination of 4 set phrases, it is time that people from all over the country, and especially in DC, come together and advocate for DC statehood. Full representation is a right that all citizens in the United States should have, particularly those living in the seat of government. I encourage all of you watching this video to check out my website and get involved, sign a petition, contact your congressperson, and fight for DC statehood. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Preamble to the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776.